Hello and welcome to another episode of Zaysan Conversations about his Plejaren contact experiences. This is a new episode which will feature a discussion between Zaysan, myself, Dan L. Brock, and Annie DeRiso, a longtime friend of Zaysan's. I hope you enjoy today's conversations. Zaysan is Shaolin. He has multiple college degrees. Zaysan directed a worldwide television show entitled UFO AZ. He has been employed as a bounty hunter, military contractor, and everything in between, including working at sea. As the founder and recipient of many awards for his charity, the Quest, ECSS, and Ending Child Sex Slavery, Zaysan is known for standing up for those who could not.
It's endingchildsexslavery.org or the Quest, ECSS.org. And I started in 2015 officially. And since then we've rescued around 2,500 kids. And we know where every one of them are to this day. So we do everything. And we have one law, and that's human law. That's why we're the most successful in the world in this field. And like I said, we know where every one of the kids are, and we require certain things of each of the kids. And we've done this on a shoestring all these years. It's a very, very dark place, and not many people understand it or the different types of it, or have actually witnessed the really dark sides of it, which is pretty much all of it. And so that's what the Quest is. It's my passion.
In addition to public speaking events with large audiences, Zaysan has been a part of many humanitarian efforts. Z seeks not to know the answer, but to understand the question. Always just a man, sometimes good, sometimes bad, but always just a man. You want to add anything to that?
No.
Okay. All right. All right, Annie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, everybody, and welcome. Annie DeRiso here. I'm in Arizona. Dan is in the Philippines, and Zaysan is in Florida. So wherever you are, join the group, and let's have fun. It's going to be an interesting ride, things you haven't heard before.
So I'm Dan Brock, and I am honored to be here to ask some questions and to take part in this whole process with learning about Plejarens and about spirituality and about everything that Zaysan knows, which is a lot. So here we go. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the whole concept of nature and how the Plejarens view nature and the role that nature plays in their society. I mean, one of the things that is different perhaps between Plejarens and Earth humans is that there's many people who subscribe to the idea of Gaia, an entity that resides within the Earth. Do the Plejarens have anything similar to that, or how do they view spiritually their relationship to nature and the planet that they're from?
Well, it's all intertwined, but again, it's based off of love and the natural law. For instance, like when a child is birthed, basically it's, that's a whole nother story, I guess. But when it's brought out of the tube and all, and it begins to learn things, they don't have the issues that we have, like having enough supply of employees or people that are educated in the field that they need. Because the way they do it is when the child is being raised by several different parents, they'll go through different phases with each one, and the kid will be just assisted and guided, but not told direction to take. And then they'll pick something that they seem to favor. And so then the parents at that time will help them with that by giving them the toys and the tools necessary in order to really bring that out. And it's all based on nature, so that they'll gravitate to what's needed. And then they'll be good at that, because that's their passion. So it's not like getting a job or anything, it's their passion. And they really want to do something like this. And a lot of times they add things to their resume, so to speak. And then when you look at like their homes, we went into a home of theirs and I didn't know I was in the home. They get a big piece of property that they choose, and then the community builds it for them under their design, and it can be as big as they want or as small as they want. And when I'm walking up to it, where we entered, I didn't realize it was like your background there. It's kind of like a tropical island type environment. And when we walked into the home, I didn't see it because it's got like glass. I don't know how to explain it. And there is no straight lines. Everything is curved in some manner or fashion. And it also fits the landscape so that there's no impact whatsoever. But the glass isn't reflective. So I didn't even see it when I walked in. And the top of the one we went into was kind of curved when I figured out what I was looking at. It was kind of curved and like an ocean wave would be just before it breaks or something on the outside in the part that I was in. But these homes are massive, and there's running water in it that creates the ions in the air. And they got, there's a frequency that goes off to prevent bugs from being inside unless they're needed in some sense. And then they can modify it for that. That's part of the so-called like personal eye or AI. And then, the water's filtered, it runs. So they really don't need faucets unless they actually want one. They can drink directly out of the little river that's coming through. And what they do is that it's a groundwater, and that they create it to come up and flow openly. And so that's within the house. It doesn't create the moisture or anything in order to degrade anything. They have plants that's all through there. They don't eat like us because they eat when they're hungry. And so a lot of times they'll have different types of trees or little tiny fruit trees and stuff in there that you can just walk up and grab and eat when you're just moving around or such. They don't have to worry about the weather or anything quite like that, or having droughts or things like that. It's all modified. It's all automatic. So, but there are people who do like real farming. They have automated ones, but some have a passion for it. So that's what they do. So when their animals, they have like a train system and such that I'd call it a monorail, but there's no wheels on anything there. And it has sensors in it, and it's always above the ground. So it doesn't get in the way of anything, no natural path or anything for the animals. The animals that I saw were similar to ours, but not like ours. And they didn't really seem to care that we were around. They didn't have any fear of us, but they didn't have any interest in us either. So, but they don't have pets or anything. And they were afraid here of the animals. And they thought it was rather unique with us about how we would make friends or pets out of animals that could kill us. And so that was always kind of fun.
Kitty, talk about Kitty.
Oh, I started showing like YouTube videos to the family about animals, trying to get them past the fear of our animals so much. And they just really liked the cat and dog videos. And at first they were pretty timid, like they were watching a horror show or something. But then when they started seeing, these funny videos and stuff, they started to change a little bit. And then, so what I did was one day when Sam Jess was here, I wanted to show her animals. So I took her to one of these big pet stores, and we walked in, and the first thing I did was take her by the fish. And so, she was getting pretty captivated with that and all. And then we started to see some of the dogs and stuff, but they were, dogs are a little bit too much I believe, for them to take. So I kind of moved down to where the kittens were, and she was enjoying it, knowing that there was a glass between me or us and them. And then, so I went and got one of the people there, employees, to bring one out. And Sam Jess was a little worried about it. She wasn't fully understanding what exactly I was doing, but where they have those little playpens or whatever in the center where you can spend time with one of the animals and stuff. And so anyways, I told her this, and then I was explaining to Sam Jess, it'll be fine and all this, and had her sit down in the center. And that way, when they brought it out, I still told her, just don't do anything, just let it find its way around, and maybe it'll clock or walk on you or something. And so anyway, when the lady came out, she brought a whole bunch of them, all of them that were there, the little kittens. And so Sam just started to freak a little bit, and I calmed her down, and the lady put him in there. And then she told us to excuse her. She needed to go work with somebody else. And so we're sitting there, and Sam Jess is completely petrified and frozen and not moving. And these little kittens are just like crawling all over the place, right? And, she started to warm up to them. And it was kind of funny to watch her and her expressions and everything. And then it finally got to a point where she was comfortable with them, and she was laughing and all this good stuff. And then when we were leaving, once it was over, and everything, and the lady came back and she said, did you want to take one? And Sam just goes, I want to take all of them. and so I stopped her. I said, yeah, just one. And I was even hesitant about that. I mean, what is she going to do with it? Because the whole family up there are petrified of animals. And they hadn't had the introduction that Sam Jess had. And so we, when we got up there, I knew that there was like a return policy and that sort of thing. And so I put it in my name and all that. And so we ended up taking it back. And then that was another funny story, is because Sam Jess comes in with his cat when we get into the ship. And it was like, everybody just poof, disappeared, vanished from sight, like we were all by ourselves there. And so, but long story short, the cat started walking around. They ended up naming it Kitty, and it's become friends with all of them, and they've got everything worked out. Where the litter box is water is in the wall, and the cat knows where to touch the wall in order to get water or to get food. And then they even created these like little butterflies, like it's like kind of like the holograms thing. It senses when her frequency when she's going down one of the hallways or something, and like little butterflies will fly out of the wall. They look like they're real, and so she'll go after them. And even if she hits the hologram, it or goes down just like it would if it was real. So she doesn't know the difference. But anyways, that's kind of the experience that I'm having with them related to animals as pets.
What you were describing earlier as far as the Plejaren homeworld, where you were seeing the homes that these Plejarens live in, was there, how can you talk a little bit about what you were seeing? Like, was there, for instance, a moon? What was the terrain like, and that sort of thing?
The terrain was really similar to like the Philippines, with the mountains and things like that. And the what you call forget exactly what you were asking.
Oh, about a moon?
Oh,
is there
yeah. There's like a moon, and then you can see like two planets also. At night you can see the moon pretty much similar to ours, but it seems smaller. But the planets that you can see, there's a total of 7 of them, but I only saw 2 that were obvious. They were almost like shadows, but they were a lot larger than what the moon was.
Interesting. Yeah.
They also had birds, but again, they weren't like ours, but they were an animal, or a bird, whatever you want to call that. And they would fly, and they acted quite like ours and made noise and all that good stuff.
Curious about the birds. Were they, bigger, or you saw something similar in size to birds here? Like, and what about the songs or the tweeting of the birds? Did you notice anything about that?
It was really similar to like seagulls. I only saw one species, but Sam just said there were more.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the concept of money. How money is in Earth human society. It's like seems to be the function of everything. And in the Plejaren world, we talk about deciding who you want to be and working at a position that is something that you want to do. And there's a societal drive to put you sort of in that position, but there's not any discussion really about compensation or anything from a monetary standpoint, like we would understand it as a medium of exchange. What can you say about the Plejarens and that?
Well, you can do absolutely nothing if you want, because all the food, everything is free. There's no challenge in it, right? And it was like I was saying earlier about everything's automated for the most part. I call it the overseer, but it's not really an overseer, but each one is dedicated to specific things, just like inside the house. And so the food's free. And we went to the town where people were working and stuff. Another big thing to remember is everybody is equal. It has no difference about nobody's different in any way. You'll have designations for the skills of certain people, so you'll have the hierarchy in that sense, but they have no more power or anything than anybody else. And so just like they were showing me this island that we were on, because this planet is entirely islands. It's like one big Philippines. And your transportation is free. They have like these motorcycles, again, without wheels. They have like these, I call them like those starships from Star Wars, except for they're 2-seaters instead of 1-seaters, and they're all free. And it's kind of like the thing that we have here, where you borrow a bike and then bring it back, sort of thing. Well, you don't have to bring these back. They're automated. They can come back on their own, but you can actually steer them. Like we had a race. I got going, and Hans and the captain were cruising, and I passed by both of them. And it was kind of funny. I got, past Hans. I kicked his bike a little bit and it moved a little, but it won't fall down or crash or anything. And so when I got past the captain, as I was passing by, he reached over and touched it to shut it off. And so he won the race. But so, all this stuff is automated. Also, there's sense for any animals or anything that might be in their way, or a person. And so it avoids all those different things. What was the question?
What do they use for energy? What's powering all of this?
I don't know, but at one point, Hans, which I assume a lot of this comes from that, he's kind of like the scientist and engineer and that sort of thing, doctor. He's really cool. But one day he was so excited to show me something. And so I was with Sam Jess, so he grabs me and she tags along. And so we go down to the bay where the pods and the ships leave and come in. And he had this canister, and it looks like those tubes that you put at the bank, when you're going through the drive-through. It was about the same size and everything. And it was a small cylinder. And we open the bay door and he throws it out and it follows the ship. And I'm still trying to figure out, what the hell is it? I mean, you're so excited and you just showed me this. I go, is it like a radio plane or something? And he's like, it collects energy. And he goes, we know this on Earth. We invented this at the same time we invented solar, except for this is clean, where solar is very toxic. And so he says it'll stay out there for about 30 minutes. Anytime it's anywhere close to light, and preferably like a star or something, like we could do it here in our atmosphere. But then when he brought it back in, it just changed color a little bit. And when it changed color, we took it inside, we took it back up to the lab area, and he put it on a table, and this thing came down over it. And what he was doing was pressurizing it, removing the vacuum or whatever. And so it took about 10 minutes. And when he brought it back in, it had shrunk down. And when he opened it up, there was like a thing about the size of a coffee cup. And it was all solid. Reminded me of like a PVC pipe that was cut, like a 4-inch pipe or whatever, that had been cut and sealed. And so he handed it to me and I said, well, that's pretty nice. What's it do, right? And he goes, look at your phone. So I pulled my phone out of my pocket and it was charging. So, and then Sam Jess said that great big warehouse type place we were in to get Kitty, with all the air conditioners and all these good things that are going on in there. This one little box that's virtually free to make would last about 9.5 years. Also, then I asked him about like, well, we're going down a dark road with all these electric vehicles and stuff. And he said, I asked him about if an EMP bomb or something went off, would it affect it? And he says, no, it's unique and individual. And then I asked him, well, what about like lightning storms and stuff like that? And he goes, no, none of that will affect it. And all it is, it's a proximity. When you get near it, it can be a lot of different distances, but anytime that you're near it, within a vicinity of it, it will charge whatever device you have that needs charge or operate anything that needs electricity, like the air conditioners or whatever. But it's basically free. And it's that small to run a big warehouse like that for 9.5 years.
Okay.
And it's also clean. It doesn't affect the bodies.
You mentioned something about this concept of overseers or an AI of some kind that sort of knows how to interact with the environment. Was there any mention of that as it knowing what its function was, the power source, knowing what its functions was? Was there an AI associated with that, or something that we would think of as an AI?
They don't actually have AI. It senses things, like everything has a signature. And so it's also programmed to either activate or deactivate specific things, right? And it's got a list of those things that it does, like for farming, right? They got machinery and stuff and it's all automated. Well, everything that needs to go into that, it controls. And there's multiple ones, so that do different or more specific jobs. And so they can talk to each other, but they can't connect with each other. Then there's like, the first time, or the second or third time I went out in the pod, which reminds me of a coffin. And I got to pilot it. Yeah, I'm an astronaut now. So, but there's a lot of things that happened prior to, but this time in particular, what Hans had done is he said that I asked him if, how does it manage all these different things, because they jump, right? They go from one spot to another spot instantaneously, virtually. And he was explaining to me, how it protects everything in that sense. So you're not going to crash, you're not going to get hit by something. It's not going to end up in the same space as something else, so on and so forth. If, for instance, in that instance, something could have invaded that space where you were jumping to, it would move you. It would shift you to another location. And it can be pinpoint where it goes. Well, for this one in particular, for this cruise, I was on my own. It's the first time I was soloing, I believe. And anyways, I'm inside and they have, like, for me, they, like when Sam Jess took me for the first time, and all I could see was her doing this stuff with her hands and everything, to make it do different things. Well, they put in like a joystick because there was no way I could figure that out, but it was all light. But I would move my hand over it and it would move with my hand just as though it was real, but I couldn't feel anything. And so they put even buttons on there for me to do certain things. But the idea behind it was it's not AI. It's what AI you would think of, right? But it was all me. So they scanned me, just whenever I walk into the ship and stuff. And so it knew who I was. It also can figure out how I think and how I react to all of these different things, right? So it knows me. So it's, in other words, it was just an extension of myself. and it protects me. That's where its power comes in. So it's like a living being that's doing all this in a sense. So it has a consciousness, but its consciousness is limited to its specific duties, and that is to take me here, there, or whatever.
Okay. Did the Plejarens say anything about their relationship to that living being, that artificial source?
Not really. It's just like having a toy. It'd be like having a phone, right? How are you connected to your phone in that sense? Because it does all these things that you couldn't do without it, right? Surf the internet, call somebody or whatever. And so their connection to technology is that simple.
Annie, what questions do you have?
Well, on the spiritual side of all of this, you and Sam Jazz had an experience that I called the merge. When you first realized that the two of you could together could do more than separate. So you became one in mind, in consciousness. You went out there together. What was that like?
A lot of people that have commented about the book, they envy me having this physical experience with these beings, right? And what I explained to them is, well, the physical contact is the lowest form, and that you make a soul contract when you come here on how you will receive the information that you came here to get. And some people will choose that, or they'll choose the mind, right? And so, the first thing is that it doesn't make any difference. That's the first thing that people need to know. Go with the one that you have and learn from within it, rather than try to change the modality. Reaching out, that's a whole nother story. But as I developed with her, we kept growing, and we went from the physical thing to where, we could feel and sense each other. And one of the things that we've come to know is like touching of the forehead to forehead, kind of like it was comfortable for me, because in the temples, that was a really common practice. And so there's this lady who's the spiritual leader of their people, and she
Mother.
Basically what she's done, mother, she has taken the training that I've had, like in the temples, like multiple people have had, with meditation or other spiritual things, that they don't define anything. That's the difference between them. They don't look to define anything. They don't set any intention, because our intentions are inherent. When you live through your life, there are things that you desire, that you want to manifest, or you want to help somebody heal, or things like that. That's just natural. And so those are the intents that have already been set. So when we add an intent to something, we just confuse the message or the stream or the frequency. So they live their life without intent, so to speak. They don't create it, because they live in the present. And so anyway, she said that because me and Sam Jess just took a liking to each other from the very first moment, and we think alike, we act alike, and she, like Mother says, she calls us trouble, and has designated, she said, we are twin stars, which is that meaning. Is like we're twins. We see things and think things. Everything is connected in that sense. And so we have an advantage over some of the others, but not a lot of an advantage, but we get to do it together. And in the first time, where we actually went somewhere, and in that process, we were kind of confused how this was all happening. And then it got to the point where, because that was verging on beyond physical, and we were entering into the mind state, where we were having these experiences, not just as a body, but we become one, and was traveling. It was like your souls match, right? Consciousness or energy. And when we were seeing things and feeling things all simultaneously. So we knew what each other was feeling. We didn't have to ask or anything, and we were having the same experience. But an individual can do that just as well. But the thing is that we moved from the physical into the mind state, which where a lot of people are in their present state. They do the mind, not the physical part. And it's absolutely more real. But then we got to a point where we were just chasing it. And so we got to a point where we went, she came to me one day and she goes, let's go somewhere. And she goes, only one thing, we'll have to die. And I didn't understand her quite so much, but with these people, I said, well, I wasn't sure I was going to check out this way or not, but what the heck, right? Because that's the one thing you don't do. You live in the present. You don't live in the past or think about stuff. You go where you're taken, in a sense, where spirit takes you. And this was what was happening to us. And then we have this where we merge and we leave, and we're on the line, there's like a line behind us. You can see the travel. First, it starts with a spiral, and then it kind of sort of straightened out. And that was when I disappeared and she disappeared. But at the same time, when you go beyond the mind or just at the edge of the mind, you are the observer and the experiencer at the same time. So you could, like, it would be as though I can sit on the outside of this sphere and I can see Sam Jess and me. As the experiencer, I was Sam Jess was me. And that is called death, because we were no longer with the body. And everything was instantaneous at that point. That's what is left after. This is what a lot of the old spiritualists would talk about, from different religions and stuff like that, is about, reaching the no mind, no body, no nothing, right? Sort of sutra. And so essentially, everything is instantaneous. Everything is brilliant. Everything is beautiful. And sometimes we didn't have a body, but when we needed to see the body, it was there. And then we had this long experience. And then on the way back, we could see that line. And again, we're one body without a body. So we were beyond the mind. Everything is instantaneous. And so as we're traveling back fast, I could see ahead of us, there's along this flat line, right? We were dead. And there was this little dip. And instantaneously, we both stopped. Now, if we weren't one, and if we weren't in that dead state, which is instantaneous, one of us would have stopped and the other one may have kept going. But because we're so alike as twin stars, and that we had that thought, well, it's not a thought, it's an instantaneous response or communication. We stopped before we got there to question whether or not we wanted to go back, kind of like the NDE, experiences and stuff. And, so we thought about it for a little while. And, well, not thought, it was all instantaneous, like I said. And so we realized, we started thinking about the family and our friends and the experiences that we've been having and all these different things. And it's like, there is no time. Let's just go back. So we went back and we ended up right where we left. And the weird thing is that last experience where we felt death, each one had a uniqueness to it, the physical and the mind. And then this one. And that was when, before we left, she was sitting on me and she had this little ornament or something over here with a little circle in it. And she spun the circle. And when we left, that's what she had done. When we got back, we were in the exact same position. And that little thing that was spinning was slowing down and came to a stop, as though there was no time that left, which helped me understand there's no such thing as time.
When you were in that state with Simyas, where you've gone into this death-like state, the idea of a soul contract is something I'm curious about. Does that sort of negate your soul contract as a physical being when you're in that state? What can you say about that?
I'm not a professor in it, but I believe that we can alter things. And for me, when we come down here, one thing I know to be true is that we've selected everything that's going to happen. And, and that's contained in our, I call it like a subconscious, but in reality, our lives are like a spiral, right? So you have two spirals with the small ends coming together. And when you get to that's the very centerpiece, that's where we remember everything from every life and everything that we know until this point. But when we're here, we only know what's there, right? And so that goes into a whole thing about being able to move from lifetime to lifetime too in one present, right? But anyways, that's where you have that cumulative, but we're here to experience certain things. And then if we are able to complete those things, then it's what I call free time. And that's what I've achieved in this lifetime as free time. So I don't have any particular purpose other than what I want. And so, and that's in the book too. I put, how I got there, who brought me to those points, and what I've learned from it. But anyway, I don't know if that's a rule or what, that it would prevent you or allow you to change that soul's direction. But I believe we're living beings as well as our souls. And so that it's our soul. And so we can make adjustments in that sense if we're advancing towards something.
The other question I have relative to what you're talking about is the idea of intention. We work with the idea, a lot of people work with the idea of setting an intention to accomplish something physically. What do you see the relationship between the intentions that Earth humans have and set versus what you're talking about with no intention and being in the present?
Well, having no intention is having an intention, but it's the one that because that's the powerful one that you're building within yourself. It's like, I want to achieve this, right? Is going through your mind by the time I'm this age or whatever, and it's getting close to that time that you want that change, whatever it may be. By then you want to have a house, or by then, this or that, or when you're something in the present that occurs where a friend of yours is very sick or something and you want to heal them. Well, you don't have to say, okay, set the intention for the house, or set the intention to heal this person. You don't have to do any of that because it's already inherent within yourself. It's kind of like when people say prayers, right? I always use that as an easy example. If you sit down and say you're religious or whatever towards, God and Jesus and everything, prayer, you can't sit down and talk about all the things that you want because every prayer is answered. And people don't see it. They see, when they do see a prayer that's answered, they consider it a miracle. But in reality, it is when they talk about these things in their prayers, go on about, oh, I want this to happen, or, please let me do this or that. You're just confusing the message, because that's not what we're verbalizing isn't necessarily what you truly intend or want. And when you prayer, this should be, hi, this is me, and love you, God, and in Jesus' name, amen. That should be it, because the intention's already there, the one that you're to fulfill and you're purposeful to be in. So if you, like I said, so again, here you go back to the intent. So I'm going to set an intent and I'm going to create this, and it takes it off gear because you're changing the frequency of what your true intention is.
Okay.
That leads back to like being negative. I call it being negative. That's how we built a relationship I did with the Plejarens and my little family. There was no, I don't ask a lot of questions about stuff that's there. I see what's presented to me, and that's where I put my interest. And so more like living in the present, And so, but the thing is that you can't lie to them. You can't do anything to soften something or change the direction of something. You have to be completely full and open to them. I had like this experience, but which I won't really go into the whole thing, but they could see the scars and the bullet holes on my body every time I'd enter. And then they questioned me on that. And here it is that they saw humans as monsters. They weren't trained to be a contactor or contactee or anything like that. But when they asked me that question, it was like, I don't want to lose these people. And if they know how these things all occurred, they're going to see me as a monster. So I had to struggle with that. So I ended up finding a way to present it to them. And I just knew exactly that that was my last day going to be on the ship, and they weren't going to have anything to do with me. But what happened, just like every single time I had these doubts, it completely reversed. It was completely different. They took my pain and they accepted it. But I was being open, and that's what's necessary. You have to be completely naked when you're in front of these people.
Now, the word you're using is neged. Say that again.
Naked.
Are you saying naked or negative, or what are you saying?
Naked. No clothes.
No clothes. Naked. Okay.
Yeah.
NAKED. Okay.
So in a sense, your soul has to be naked.
Okay.
So that brings up one of my questions that I wonder about. You're finding out that we're more like them every time you go up there. We're just so similar in so many ways. But what we call spirituality here for Earth humans, how do they see spirituality? How is it different for them?
It's really not much different in a sense, but it's more advanced. Because the things that we think of, and like out of body, for example, simplest thing, right? Leaving your body consciously, or being able to bilocate, or do any of these things that's beyond what we think we're capable of, but we're in a process that we're trying to realize it, or being able to communicate with somebody with the mind. They're already there because they follow nature. And so it's like I said, a lot of the stuff that, like, they had a ceremony for me, and it was so odd, the experience that I had. It was like beyond. I didn't have to suffer. I didn't have to do any of these other things, but it's all based on love, because it's like they explained to me, their stomach's smaller, their intestines smaller, and supposedly some of their waste comes through their skin. But I've held their arms and their hands and stuff, and I've never felt anything, or there's never been a smell. So I don't quite understand that fully. But everything we do, I actually, in the holodeck, I call it the holodeck because it's so similar to that. I created a bar and introduced them to a bar, and they already had beer. That was a common thing for them. Not something they participated in very often, but they did have it. And I took them in there. I taught them how to play pool, and they actually have the games very similar to pool on their planet, so they recognized it. And but I added, we had music, and they were all very unfamiliar in the beginning, but then it just became a social thing with different toys, right? And so, but you see the bonding, and you see the experience of what people go through. It's almost identical to us. And then you see the emotion that comes from them, and the caring that comes from them. It's almost like they're always at a higher frequency than what we are. And they also told me about how we came to be, in a sense, how I think it's Darwin's map of our evolution. It's nothing like that at all. And there was no Big Bang and all that. So a lot of the things that we thought was real doesn't exist, or didn't. But essentially our evolution came from, if you could imagine us being like a leaf on a tree, and we would drop, and they seeded us, not entirely, but they seeded us. And so each time one of these leaves would come down, it was unique, and it would take off running, right? And then it would die off. There was something about it didn't make it. Well, we were one of the few that actually made it. And then there's been new versions of that since, but that's how we've evolved. But what people don't understand is kind of like the chimpanzee, right? The chim has evolved as far as it's going to evolve. They used or ape, I forget which, but they managed to get a tool, where they would stir something or get food. That was the peak of their evolution, just as they had peaked in their evolution, the Plejarens. And what was missing, what we are missing, that they've had 5,000 years to find, is that, we use our entire brain, but there's still files that's left unopened in our head, right? And those files have to be filled with love. Love is the key that takes us from what we see in this survival mode by needing the mind, by needing our hands and being in our bodies. The love, the feel of love, is the necessary ingredients that takes us on to all these other things beyond the mind, into the mind and then beyond the mind. So whatever you can imagine is possible through that action.
It puts love at the top of everything, because everything, if you start with love at the top, then everything that comes down from that, if it's true love, unconditional love, is going to be the right way, the way it's supposed to be. And they seem to live that way.
And see, it's natural law.
Yeah, natural law. Okay, good. Well,
because the natural law is the one that guides everything to where it needs to be.
Law of nature the same throughout the universes?
I don't know.
Do we know?
It is with these people, and it seems to work for them. But I imagine, I've met other species that aren't very, similar to us. Most of them, the ones that are around my people, are similar, human, like we look like. But there are other species that they don't really communicate with, but they understand the laws. And the laws are, like, I don't know how to explain it really, except for because they can't communicate with them very well. And so, but there is an understanding about not screwing things up. Like, you can't have two spaceships moving side by side near a planet to push the planet out of orbit or something like that, right? The natural laws are followed. And so, but then I met this other species that didn't express emotion like us. And basically they felt like they were the originals of this parsect, or whatever you want to call it. And that they, brought the Plejarens in and helped them learn things in order to get to us, right? Because they're kind of scary. They don't deal well with a lot of the species that, other than the ones that look more like them. So, there are differences between them, but that's our connection to the Plejarens.
Yeah, I mean, most people think there's only the little grays. They have no
hundreds.
idea, huh?
There's hundreds that just look like them.
Yeah.
That are different types of species.
The three-fingered ones that you saw when you took the pod down under in the ocean, mm-hmm. off of Hawaii,
and on the ship too.
How so on the ship?
Because we had this, the introduction was Sam Jess taking me in a pod, right? And then she took me underwater, and she had checked with them first, and she wanted to show me something. And so we're going really deep into the ocean. Okay. And as we reach this one time, she tells me to look to the right, and there's a big mountain ridge on the side. And I saw this like line shape form, almost like a laser light looking thing that made a rectangle. And when it went up, I saw these three beings, and they put their hands up, and they had three fingers. And then later I'm in the ship, and they come to visit, and for some reason, they really like Sam Jess. And so they had to create an environment which is unique to them, and where they could walk anywhere in the ship and not have any environmental problems, breathing or anything like that. And you don't see anything, you could see it. Sam Jess showed me on a little screen thing what was happening in the environment and such. But I got to speak with them, and it wasn't much of a conversation, but they just wanted to meet with me, and they explained a few things, just a few little key things, and just wanted to know about me and Sam Jess and I about them. And I was able to distinguish the one that was a female, but they're not really that different, male and female. But they said that when I asked if this one was a female, they told me that, our chemistry and biological or whatever is completely different than what they are. But if I was to compare that, yes, that one would have been a female. And just because of the mannerism that I could tell. But so I think that answers the question.
All right, Annie, over to you.
Well, that's part of what I was going to ask. Everybody, like I said before, everybody thinks there's only the little gray ETs here, or that visit here, or they have no idea of what the cosmos really is like. Neither do I, but I gotta, I'm working on it. How can we move this along? How can we help the Earth humans get over some of this?
It's already being done.
It's already being done?
Yeah. It's like they were in the process, and there's a lot about this that I write in the book too, but they weren't being real successful, but they had the right idea. And after my interaction with this group of people that weren't trained to interact, but because of the connection between me and Sem Jess, I had the second meeting with them. And then they always have like a report to their command or whatever, the ones that are overseeing everything. And they asked them if they felt comfortable to continue this, because we were able to find ways of communicating that others hadn't. And they had me meet some of these people too, and it didn't go well. I thought that they put me there to see if I was compatible with them. And we were completely different. I couldn't really connect with them at all. And so, but long story short, the idea is that they want to find young people that are, open. And when they find them, they do this through frequency. They can map anybody through frequency. They use that for a lot of things. That's how they find me, right? And that's how I get to the ship and everything. But they find individuals that are special in that sense to them, and then they teach them. And these ways of like love and everything that I'm experiencing. And like the captain told me, he goes, by the way, you went past the audition, sort of thing. I wouldn't be an applicant because I'm too old and all this other thing. But anyways, they're training of these people in the consciousness about love and natural laws and things like this. They'll come back, and that's a very positive energy. And people are attracted, like they're repelled from negative energy. They're attracted to positive energies. And this person will, just through their natural actions, people will gravitate to them. But they're not ever to be a teacher or anything like that, or philosopher or anything like that to people. It's just to be there in consciousness as an example. And people gravitate to that and want to be it and emulate it. And then, and it's the 100th monkey sort of thing where, one affects another one, who affects another one, who affects another one, sort of thing. And hopefully in like 50 years or so, there will be a consciousness of people that is common. And so that will be the power of this earth, and find the direction that it's going to lead to. As of now, there is no possible way because of the way people think, see, and do things. So that's the way they want to change things. And it makes sense to me.
Yeah, 50 years seems like a long time right now, but in the blink of an eye, so I guess 50 years is like, hurrah, we might make it if we can hang on long enough. Yeah. Wow.
Well, we'll make it eventually.
Eventually. Yes. Dan, what are you thinking over there?
Well, I'm thinking about humor and what role humor plays in this whole process. How humor and comedy and laughter is a part of this process. Can you talk a little bit about that?
it's funny because like in
funny. I get
yeah,
it.
when I first met them, it was really, there were so many things that I didn't know. I didn't realize that they're a whole bunch of nerds because they're all following their passion and the work that they're doing, right? All except for Sam Jess. She was like a stowaway and trying to get out of it. But like I introduced handshaking and to the captain and Sam Jess and the others. And it was very awkward for them at first. And so I kind of thought that maybe they weren't used to touch. And then, another thing that happened was I taught Sam Jess to hug, and then I taught the others to hug. And it was very, very awkward. It was kind of like me, the first time a guy hugged me, right? Stiff and everything. And then I was never really good at hugging women either. And, so they were kind of that way, except for Sam Jess. And then Sam Jess just like totally got into it once she figured it out. I mean, it was a learning process too. It's kind of funny. I mean, it all happened in a matter of a half hour, but it was a process. And then advancing on, I can't get anything. I mean, I go up there, right? And I'm there to hang out or whatever. And it takes an hour because I have to go around to each one and hug every one of them. It's like the thing that they need every day now, and so I could be with somebody for 10 or 15 minutes while they just are hugging. And at first I resisted. And now by this new book I've gotten out or getting ready to put out, they've actually I've become accustomed to that too. So I'm comfortable with it. It's amazing the feeling that you get just by sharing that space with another person. And then, so I'm thinking to myself, maybe their society hasn't understood this yet, or they don't connect. And then the humor, I would do things to like Sam Jess, and then Sam Jess would do things back to me. And they almost like they were having to learn how to laugh too. And then I used to mess with the captain a lot of times. And then like I was telling him, went on their plan on the motorcycle. When I went to pass him, he pushed on my bike to make it stop so I couldn't pass him. So it was like, oh, I'm getting progress. But along the way, we went to this colony of theirs. They wanted to show me the colony and everything. And we met these different people. Well, later, I needed to recruit 3 of the people that we met on the colony. And they were, like young, and they looked like they had a fashion to them, and they weren't wearing the clothes like my family was. And none of the people were actually wearing like the jumpsuits and sort of thing. And they were more emotional. And like one of them was crying, and they were all about being touched. And I picked up this little kid and everything, and it was just like anywhere else. Right. And so I began, and they have the humor, they have the social gatherings. I learned all those things. So those people are even closer to us, in my opinion. They act the same. They, have the same type of emotion and love and all that. And so, that's what I say. And I introduced it to the family, but it wasn't as though their people weren't used to contact and hugging and that sort of thing.
Because this was a lab ship, right?
Yeah.
That you're on when that, yeah. Okay.
And see, the people that work there, Hans and Franz and Laura and Snake Lady and all this, they are nerds. And I wasn't seeing that. I was thinking, oh, this is all the exposure I really had, other than a couple other things and mother, to the people. And so, I'm beginning to figure out that their whole race is like this because they're doing their passion. They just get lost a lot of times doing their work, and because that's what they do and that's what they love, because they don't really sleep. And so, but then when I met with others, then, things changed. I figured out, I was just, I just met the people who are a bunch of nerds.
Well, they weren't used to picking up strays out of the swamp,
Yeah.
That's what started all of this.
Yeah.
Describe Sam Jess to me.
She looks like she's 24, but in reality, she's like 260 some years old. And perfect. I mean, all of them are absolutely perfect. And their ears are a little longer and narrower. And the hair, when I asked Sam Jess one time to touch her hair, and I was looking at her hair, and it almost looks like monofilament line, the clear stuff, except for they had a tint to it, a blonde tint. And you didn't notice that. It felt real silky and everything. I mean, you wouldn't notice any difference if they're walking down the street and by
It
passing.
was real hair.
Yeah, but it was real hair, and they grow it, and they can change its color and everything if they want. But the group of people that I was with, I associate it to the military, but there's no military or anything. But they were, or you could say like government employees or something, because they had uniform. Most all of them had the blonde hair and blue eyes. But when I went to the colony and I went to the planet, there's a variety of different looks. That reminds me, like, one of them's balding, mother had black hair, but it's by choice. It's not, they could have a full head of hair all their life, but I don't know, understand.
So you're saying that I could be a Plejaren potentially being bald? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but you're not tall enough.
I'm 6'2". That's pretty tall, I think.
I know. So I'm saying you're not tall enough.
Okay.
But yeah, but the other thing is that interests me was, like, there's these two ladies that's on our ship. The new ship is they're white, like a paper, and I don't know what species they are yet. I haven't went there, but they act and speak a lot like the Plejarens. But then I've noticed, like, at a ceremony and stuff, that this one lady looked Asian, and another one looked this way, and they looked like us, but they're us, right? The color is all unified. They're all white, basically, are white. And mother has black features to her, and so I could see the similarities between us and them maybe evolved, right? Because they still had some of the features. I mean, you had to look close, but you could see the features of different races in them. They live to be between 800 and 1,000. And as they get older, they start to grow more. But the problem with that is their organs don't. And so that's what causes their death. But most of them are, Sam Jess is the shortest one. I guess she comes up to about here on me. And I'm 6'2". So, and then, mother around 7 foot, and the others are, high 6. So
what do you know about children in terms of, the age of some children?
Essentially, when they're freed or whatever from the tube or the raising, when they start to actually become, a being, in a sense, speech and everything and learning, to me, they look like 4 or 5 years old is when they're mobile. The other thing is too, I kind of got to thinking about it at one time. It's not that they told me, but we live at about 100, they live to about 1,000, but they travel faster than light, and so you don't age, which that was a big lesson that I learned and put in the book about time. And basically it doesn't exist, but when you jump from one place to another, there's no time. But like, that's the old theory about when you have two twins on Earth, one of them takes off in a rocket ship, comes back 2 years later, they're still the same age, but the person that was left on Earth is 2 years older. And so if you start to apply them jumping through space and all that stuff, maybe they're 100 years old too, in a sense. They've just been extended because of the time that they spent beyond light.
So you're not aging as fast when you're on one of their craft.
When you're jumping. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
When they're moving from one place to another. And a lot of people might find interesting too is how they find me is my frequency, my unique frequency, right? And so they can find me that way. And the captain was trying to explain it to me, in dumbed down terms. It's kind of like I was asking about the distance. Are they just outside the door, when I walk in, or are they long ways away? And he said, look, think about your ham radios. One night you can be sitting in Colorado and talking to Japan, but the next night you can't get that far, but you might be able to get to Australia or something. And it's real similar with how they can see my frequency, but being able to move from here and jump into the ship, it varies on that much of a distance. I mean, they can be on the moon and everything with no problem at any time, any point. But when they're near or 500 light years away or something, they may or may not be able to get me there. They may have to move in order to pick me up.
A friend of the four of us is Tom Dongo, and y'all kind of ran an experiment with him doing remote viewing to you on the ship. Would you tell that story?
Yeah, he wanted to meet them when I talked to him. And like I said, like he said, and some people I've told, he said that want to see pictures and stuff, but we both talked about that. It's like, yeah, all right, you can debunk everything, right? Like he said, he goes, I could go to one of my conferences and walk in with an alien, that looks completely strange and everything, and people wouldn't believe it. They, so we were trying to think, how can we identify this? And he's one of the world's best remote viewers. And I thought, well, I'll tell you what, next time I'm on the ship, I'll set up a table and I'll put some stuff on it. And I said, you can remote it. And so he did. And he got 5 out of the 6 items. He couldn't make out what one of them.
Yeah.
So
I think he said something about it was turned sideways or something. He couldn't make it out or something. Yeah.
And since then, he's had conversations with the captain.
Yeah, I know, your friends, all of us want to go with you. We want to be there. We want to experience this.
Well, come on.
Well, invite us.
You have been.
What's keeping you, Annie? I'm there all the time.
Yeah, I can tell you're on the island. Yeah, you're on the island planet. Yes.
Yeah.
Did I just talk for over an hour and you not hear anything I had to say?
Oh,
You were talking? I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
I reverted to being an Earth human, yes. But so what I'm getting at is there is no distance between here and there. There is no time and space, because this happened instantaneously without any outside influence, that he could see what was on this desk or table or whatever that you were on the ship. So we all supposedly have these talents. Very few of us even know that we have them, much less use them. What do we need to do? What do we need to start another 100th monkey?
Stop thinking.
On sensing. To stop thinking. Right. Okay. Just let
Because
it
you
come.
already know. And like the reason that they accepted me, past the second visit with them was, well, my mannerism. When I found Seven Jess, I didn't, she was in the middle of the jungle, right? In a swamp and 100 miles from anything. She's wearing this blue jumpsuit. She had blonde hair, absolutely gorgeous. What the hell is she doing in the middle of this place, right? Well, she was stuck in the mangrove trees. And so I approached it as I would an animal that was stuck in a fence or something, really cautious, try to gain its trust if I could and free it. And I didn't expect anything at all. All I did was, well, there's a being there and she's hurt, so maybe I can help. right? I didn't ask her any questions. Of course, at that time, she didn't know the language, but she was learning it. And as we spoke, and showing her examples and stuff. And so that's how we were communicating. And so when I helped her up, it was really odd to me too, because still I didn't know if I was really there or what was going on. And then we get, so on and so forth. And then about being negative, right? And not like people will ask me to ask them these questions, right? And when I go there, and they're all questions like about Earth and space and stuff. And
Pyramids.
yeah, and to me, I use the example of astral travel. I've had so many people come up to me and ask me about astral travel, and I'll only tell them the very beginning, enough to get them where they need to go. And then the rest is up to them, because if not, they may never find or travel consciously. We do it every night unconsciously, but they want to do it consciously. So I won't go there to get them to follow me, and I don't want to screw up their learning process. But if they just relax and do these certain steps, then they will find it. And I says, and then I'll talk to you all you want about your experiences, astral traveling. And the thing is that people have this preconception of, I'm going to go find out who killed Kennedy when I get out of my body and stuff. The thing is it's just like with these people, when you take that step and you're outside your body, there is so much candy in front of you. You never even think about what you thought you were going to want to go see, because this candy in front of you, you got to explore. And so that's kind of the way I live my life more and more as time passes. And when I'm with them, it's like the same thing. It's like, I don't care about all these things. But the funny thing is when they explain something to me, it's like one sentence of a paragraph, and I got to fill in all the rest. And so these questions, like if somebody asks me about the pyramids or something like that, to ask them a question, it's kind of funny. I'll never ask them that question, but because of the way that we communicate with each other, I bet if I was in the pyramids, I could tell you everything about the pyramids without ever having to study them, just because of the way you learn and process things that's beyond the mind, right? The way you
There's
see
no
and perceive.
time, no space.
No.
Right.
And we did a great video. Not a lot of people liked it, I don't think, or stood with it, but with Ron Holt. And he's into the quantum mechanics or something like that. And he goes into the details of all those processes, about being able to have an experience in this lifetime and jump ahead in time or jump behind in time and think and believe everything that you're actually there. And then you come back to the body that's present and you think, what the hell was that all about? And they can be the most inconsequential things that ever was, like, putting up a piece of paper or something. That's what you're experiencing when you move into that time, although there's no time, and where anything is possible, anytime, all the time, everything. It's kind of like when somebody's thinking about stealing a car, the source or the God or whatever you want to do. They go, sure, go ahead, because you're getting an experience. A lot of people don't understand that either. You're here to experience things. And yeah, there might be consequences. It's going to really screw up your life and all that if you get caught and everything. But the point is it's an experience.
I see time and space, or I try to understand your time and space when you're jumping from explain jumping. How do these craft do that? Because, they still think down here that, we can't go faster than the speed of light and all of this, like a bullet. So
there's highways through space that's faster than other parts of space. And when they jump, basically they just move from one point to the next point through those fast streams or whatever highways. That's the other thing that people don't understand. Geometry in space is different than geometry here. So it's applied differently. And so once we reach out and once we get into that area, in other words, somewhere in space or whatever, and we start to study it, then we'll understand, the process that it takes to go from one place to another.
The concept of free will is something I'm kind of curious about in terms of, what do you think exists for the Plejarens, exists for us, or does it exist at all? What's your thoughts on that?
It's natural law. So yeah, of course, there's free will. That's awful simple, right? I mean,
it's really too simple. I can't have it that simple. It doesn't work.
But you probably asked the question because I told you to stop thinking, and now you stop thinking, and now you got the right answer, right?
Yeah, that's it. What was I thinking? I forgot.
But what do we,
okay.
Think about it as a physical being, a human being, and everything else, and you're walking around Earth and you want free will. Think about how that's created. It's because you have a desire to do something, right? And so you move in that direction. Well, if you're in love in your mind, you've filled those other parts of the brain with love. That's activated. So it's not like you're thinking you desire something, you desire something. And so that's the direction that you go. That's natural law.
Because it's sensing. You're sensing it, right?
No, it's a little bit different. Sensing is like the key to most everything. And there's a lot of stuff that's been written about it, but nobody's really been able to show it or teach it or anything else. Sensing, I was taught, kind of funny, the most primal example. One day I took Sam Jess out to the beach, and we drove out onto the beach and stuff, and it's like a secluded area. And we just wanted to look at the stars. And so we're sitting on the hood of the truck, and I see the lights move around and everything in the sky. And so she goes, "What do you want?" I go, "I want to talk to somebody up there." And so she goes, "Well, dummy, just do your sensing, the things that we were teaching you about sensing." And in other words, here's where the thing again comes into play about intent. You just got to move that away because our intent's inherent, right? And so, and it's instantaneous. So here we go. I go into, just relaxing and seeing gratitude, realizing gratitude. And I go to my go-to, which is the first time I saved a little kid that was involved in, sex trafficking. And, it became real. That's how you got to do is you got to find that unconditional love within yourself, something that reminded you of that total love within you, one experience, whatever it may be, and you relive it. So you see it, you remember what is happening all along, and you start to detail it until suddenly what'll start to happen is it becomes real again to you, as though you're reliving it. And there's even more details in it than there was before. And then when you reach that point, it's been activated, whatever your intent had been. And so, all of a sudden, I hear in my ear, "Hello." And, my eyes got big and I looked at Sam Jess. She goes, "I heard it too." I mean, so that's what sensing is, but you can use the sensing for healing, for traveling, for just about anything that you want, to send messages, to specific people. Kind of like when you're thinking of somebody and the phone rings and it's who you were thinking about.
Now, did you just say healing? Are you talking about healing, Reiki and things like that? Is sensing?
Reiki is like an introduction to healing, because because you're following a structure. As long as you're following the structure, you'll never get to where you need to go. But using structure to get you to become it yourself, then so I don't really call it Reiki, but there's nothing negative about it. It's all positive. But to heal, if somebody made a contract not to be healed for a specific thing at a specific time, nothing's going to happen. And you're not doing the healing. You're opening up the energy or the frequency in order for that person to be healed.
For the body to heal itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Jan, how you doing over there?
He's asleep.
Well, maybe I'm asleep. I don't know.
50 years, huh?
If we make it, yeah.
Well, that's a heavy statement.
Oh, we'll make it. We may not like the ride, but we're going to make it.
Yeah.
Thank you both very much.
Yeah.
I'll leave us in
Well,
our
thank
messed
you.
up
Thank you,
phase
Dan.
phase
Thank
here.
you.
Yep.
Love you guys.
All right. I'm going to go
Yes.
ahead and shut her down, and
Live long
I'll do
and
a little
prosper.
intro to here. Yes, live long and prosper. What's the other term they used? That's something else the Vulcans said.